who went missing off of the Disney cruise ship, the Wonder, where she was working as part of the youth team on the ship. Now, it's a really mysterious case. She is still considered missing to this day, although some people think that she fell overboard of her own accord, and some people think that she was put in the water by someone else. Now, let's get into the story. Rebecca Corrigan was 23 years of age, and she was from Chester in England. She had a variety of jobs in the hospitality industry, and people described her as being like go, go, go. Like, she was so high energy, she was really friendly, and everybody wanted to be around her because she was like sunshine. Her family consisted of 2 foster brothers, her sister Rachel, and her mum, Anne-Maria, and her dad, Mike. They were a really close family, and even when she was away working on the Disney Wonder, they had lots of conversations. They messaged all the time and spoke on Facebook Messenger because it was free. And so her family always knew what she was up to. Now, I just want to put a side note here because it is relevant to the case. Rebecca was a lesbian, a proud lesbian. She'd never been with a man before, and she'd known from a very young age that that was how she was going to live her life. And there is some parts of this case which will feature into relationships she had, etc. So it is important to note that. Now, in 2010, Rebecca went to London to interview to get her job on the Disney Wonder, and she managed to get through thousands of different applicants because of her experience in the hospitality industry and her high energy, and she was so proud to get that job. Now, at some stage during working on the Disney Wonder, Rebecca got the message from back home that her grandfather had sadly passed away. She was very close to her grandfather, and so Disney Wonder actually gave Rebecca 2 weeks off to go back to Chester to say goodbye to her grandfather, grieve with her family before she would return 2 weeks later. Now, this is Tracy Medley, and this was Rebecca's girlfriend on the cruise ship. Rebecca was madly in love with Tracy, and they had this relationship that was very passionate, very fiery, and when Rebecca left the ship to go back to Chester for her grandfather's funeral, when she come back, she realised that Tracy was back in a relationship with a male off the boat, that Tracy had been in this relationship before she'd been with Rebecca. So it all became quite messy, and Rebecca returned to the ship to find out that her girlfriend had kind of moved on and was still kind of playing her along at the same time. So Rebecca was struggling emotionally with this difference when she came back. Now, Rebecca was last seen 11 days after her 24th birthday on the 22nd of March 2011. The circumstances of her disappearance to this day baffle everyone, and her family have never had any closure or any answers. Now, being as it was a Disney cruise ship where Rebecca went missing from, Disney quite quickly moved to cover up a lot of things and to stop certain parts of the story getting out. Now, the boat was actually en route to Puerto Vallarta in Mexico after departing from Los Angeles when Rebecca was last seen on video footage on March the 22nd, 2011. Now, these are some of the last images on CCTV of Rebecca on the boat. Now, as you can see, she is wearing men's clothing that's far too big for her. She has her head in her hands and she looks really upset. She also made a phone call to another person who was crew on the ship and had a conversation with them about how her girlfriend had really upset her, how she was confused, how everything was falling apart, and she couldn't really understand what had happened while she had been away in Chester. The next morning at 9 a.m, Rebecca did not turn up for her shift, which was so unlike her, and immediately Disney staff say they searched the ship and contacted both the US Coast Guard and the Mexican equivalent. But this did not draw any clues as to what had happened to Rebecca. Now, at some stage, the Disney captain and Disney as a whole came out and gave a story about what they thought had happened to Rebecca Corrigan. They said on deck 5 they had found these perfectly placed flip-flops, and they believed that Rebecca had had her feet in these flip-flops when a rogue wave had come up to the boat, dragged Rebecca into the water, leaving behind her flip-flops in perfect placement, and the sea had claimed Rebecca's life, basically. At some stage when this lead was looked into, it was found these flip-flops were not Rebecca's. They had another crew member's name and room number signed on the side of them, and they were not Rebecca's style, they were not her size, and so it seems like these were planted after the fact for Disney to be able to perfectly explain away exactly what happened to Rebecca. And I will note this point that rogue waves do happen. They are massive waves that come out of the blue and normally do damage to the ship, or, you know, they can have some kind of lasting effects. But Disney was claiming this rogue wave had kind of tiptoed up to the boat, just taken Rebecca, placed her into the water, leaving behind her flip-flops, and no other signs, including no water on the deck, nothing that had ever been there. Now, what we don't find out till 6 years after Rebecca's disappearance, when Tracy decides to come out and start speaking about Rebecca and what happened that night, that on the night that Rebecca went missing, Tracy claimed that her, along with her boyfriend off the ship, had a threesome with Rebecca. And after this threesome, Rebecca had got upset, left the room wearing the man's clothing, which I don't know his name, it's not in many reports, wearing his clothing, and said she would be back soon, and she never came back. However, Rebecca's parents believe something quite different happened. Rebecca's parents say that they found amongst her stuff when they went over to pick up her stuff off the boat and tried to get some kind of answers of what happened to their daughter. They actually found Rebecca's favourite shorts that she always wore. It went perfectly with her uniform and they were really comfortable for her. They found that the crotch area of the shorts was ripped, all the material, and so that would lead the parents and myself to believe that there hadn't been some kind of agreed sexual kind of escapade, but some kind of sex attack. That would also align with Rebecca leaving the room, not even grabbing her own clothes, which were ripped, but taking this man's clothes and walking up and down the deck with her head in her hands. It's also really important to note here that Rebecca had never in her life had any sexual contact or sex with a male, so it seemed quite unlikely that after her girlfriend had decided to fool around with both, that Rebecca would throw herself into one of these situations. That for me leaves two outcomes which I would be willing to believe. One is that Rebecca herself decided to jump off of the boat. Now, I don't believe that ever happened from deck 5, as there is like a 6-foot railing which make it absolutely impossible unless she was going to climb right up and then do it. There's other decks on the boat when she would have had more access to just be in the water. The second thing I believe may have happened is that the two people who had attacked Rebecca that night decided to place her into the water or do something to her and then put her body in the water to get rid of her. Because Rebecca, as she was in such a heightened emotional state, was likely to say what had happened. Now, two things have happened since Rebecca went missing that would lead people to believe that maybe she is still alive or somebody knows more than what they're saying. So firstly, a month after Rebecca went missing, bank charges started showing up on one of her credit cards. Now to this day, the bank company has refused to say where these transactions were made from, so we don't even know what country they came from, which would give us a really big clue into who it may be using these cards. Her family have managed to get nowhere with it. Bahamas police are the ones that are actually in charge of any investigation into Rebecca due to where it was in the water that this happened, and so UK cannot get involved, America don't have jurisdiction, and so her family are left with no answers. The second thing that happened was Rebecca had given her parents, her family in general, had access to all of her social media accounts and were able to log in, which they were doing quite frequently to check if she'd been online, if she'd had any messages, if there was any clues. At one point, several months after she disappeared, somebody changed the passwords to those accounts. Again, when Rebecca's parents had some hope with this and tried to ask people about what happened, they were told it was just a Facebook glitch and they should stop asking questions. Disney have been really unhelpful in this investigation. Despite the whole ship being covered in CCTV, they refused to look if there was any of Rebecca going off the ship, any of her on deck 5. They've literally done everything they can to try and make this case go away because they want to continue to make money and keep the Wonder in business. It's so unfair because it feels like, apart from to Rebecca's family, Rebecca has very much been let down by everyone and forgotten by everyone. And whoever may have had a hand in her death are very much getting away with this and continuing to live